with YouTube, but they will not let me access a camera on either my desktop or my laptop for some reason. So I'm back on my phone. They're allowing me to do it on a mobile app. So here I am. Today we're going to talk about LS motors, specifically a 383 LS stroker cathedral port deal, using a 4.8/5.3 iron block, a 4-inch crank, and forged rods and forged pistons. And we use scat stuff in this particular one, so scat crank, scat rods, and then the pistons. I think the pistons were JEs if I remember right. And then we had trick flow 225 heads on this thing, CNC ported ones. We had a good sized cam, and I kind of wish, I think that this was the 232 crane camshaft, 224, 232 crane camshaft. But I kind of wish that I would have had one of the cams that we run now. Like I would like to try a 671 with a Truck Norris, or probably even more so like a hot rod cam or a red hot cam. I'd like to see what's happening. I'm kind of interested in what's happening down low with a blower that's this big, because it's not like we had any shortage of torque. I mean, compared to stock, we only ran this thing down at like 4,000, but we had a lot of, let's see, 475 versus 592, like 130 something foot-pounds of torque. So we were still gaining quite a bit, and we never ran very much boost on this thing. But let's jump right in. So we'll talk about, I want to talk a little bit about the changes that we made on the 383. So it was a 383 stroker, like we talked about. And that meant the 4-inch stroke, it was combined with, we bored out the iron block out to 3902, 3905. That's pretty common size. A lot of guys will go to the standard LS1, without going an overbore, to the standard 5.7 LS1 bore size, and there's lots of pistons available for that. There's also oversized pistons for that also work in this thing. So if you're making a 383, that's kind of what you would get. And then we had a 6125 rod, and then, like I said, the forged, or the 4-inch crank from the guys at Scat. We had good heads on it. We had a good camshaft in it. We ran it with 2 different induction systems when we ran it NA, because like we like to run the motor NA to find out how much power it makes, and then we can kind of figure out, are we getting a good gain from that, from what we're doing, relative to the amount of boost that we're adding. So we ran this thing both carbureted and fuel injected, which was interesting. And I'm curious, if I had a poll, and we'll make this the unofficial poll, but I ran this 383, both with a carbureted Victor Jr. intake manifold and a 950 XP carburetor. And then I also ran it with a fast LSXR intake manifold and a 102 millimeter throttle body. So we ran it fuel injected. We ran it with the same fuel on both of them. We optimized the air, fuel, and timing. We did jetting on the carburetor, and then we added timing in this thing. And we ran a little bit more timing on the carbureted mode just to try it. It didn't seem to respond to much more, maybe a degree or so. But we ran it with the single plane Victor Jr., which tends to be high RPM, and we ran this thing out to 6,600 RPM was where it seemed to kind of want to make power. So what do you guys think? Did the single plane intake manifold make more peak power, or not even, let's say, peak power? Did it make more power on the top at the maximum RPM? Did it make more power on the big end than the long runner fast manifold? So let me know what you guys think in the comments while you guys are sitting there answering. Does a single plane make more power than the long runner fast manifold? So we'll go ahead and take a look on this 383 when we ran it NA. This thing made 526 horsepower and 400 and, it had to be more than that, right? Yeah, 496 foot-pounds of torque. So it did well. That was with the single plane intake manifold. So are you ready for the answer on your question? The fast made more power everywhere. It made more power down low. It made more power in the middle. There was one point where they essentially made right near the same amount of power. I mean, it was onesies and twosies, kind of thing. Let's see how much difference this is. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's 2 horsepower there. So where they eventually kind of merged together and then they separated again. But equipped with the fast manifold, this thing made 548 horsepower, and peak torque checked in at over 500 foot-pounds, 503 or 504 foot-pounds. So it did very well. You know, it did much better with fast. Like I said, lots more average power, better peak torque, and peak torque by a little bit. Yeah, I think it was 5 or 6 foot-pounds. And then what we did was take those manifolds off and installed a 671 blower. I used a lower intake manifold, the blower intake manifold, and some of the idlers and everything. I think that those came from Speedmaster. The blower itself actually came from the guys at the blower shop who do excellent work. And it was a polished blower shop 671 blower. We put two 950 carburetors on it. Not that this combination needed it because we weren't running a lot of boost on this thing. But we ran the 671 with a fairly, as far as pulley combinations go, a fairly mild pulley combination. We had a 55 tooth crank pulley and a 60 tooth blower pulley. So we were underdriving the blower essentially. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a look now at what our, have to get around my light here. So that pulley combination produced a peak of 7.3 pounds of boost. It started out at 5.6 and then kind of eked its way up to 7.3 out at the top. And then this thing ended up making 753 horsepower at 6,600 RPM. Air fuel was 11.9 out there. This thing had, let's see how much timing we had. We had pump gas and race gas on this thing, and we had 22 degrees of timing total. Had an ATI dampener on it, which we used to bolt the ATI dampener allowed us basically, because it had a 3-bolt pattern, to bolt the blower or the crank pulleys. The blower pulleys and the crank pulley are interchangeable on that style blower, with the cog belt on it, and then this just has an easy sliding tensioner on it. So the ATI allowed us to do that. We had 1 7/8" headers on this thing. We ran 75-pound injectors when we ran this thing with the fast, and then we ran when we were running the thing carbureted. But this thing made good power. So 750 horsepower, 383 with a big blower on sticking out of the hood. And yes, I understand that, you know, turbos, yes, lots more, all that, you know, even the centrifugal blower and stuff. But it just doesn't do what, it just doesn't make the statement that this thing does. It doesn't make the statement that a big blower like this makes. And running at this boost level, 7 pounds, these things really do fairly well here. We've talked about it before. They have fairly good intercooling, you know, charge cooling from the fuel going through the blower, which is required for this kind of blower. You don't want to spin it dry, as it were, and put the injectors down below. And I say that because the manifold that came from Speedmaster had that provision. They have injector bungs there. We just plugged them. But you can run a rail and injectors down there, but you do need some fuel going through the top. And this thing would have been even happier on E85 had we run E85 on it. They like that. There's even more cooling. You can run more timing, run more boost, you know, do all that stuff. But even by itself, normally on something like this, the charge cooling effect and the E85 changes power by, you know, 25 or 30 horsepower sometimes, just all by itself, without changing the timing, without changing the boost. Just changing to E85 is a better deal. There was a lot of power left. We were still climbing. We had just jumped from 6,500 to 6,600. We've gone from 747 to 753. So we were still climbing at 6 horsepower per 100 RPM. So it was still going up. Short runner manifold, you know, we had a climbing boost curve. So that's still working pretty well. And we could have just basically reversed the pulleys, and we could have made, you know, I'm sure 10 pounds probably on this thing with all the pulley combinations. It could have easily made, you know, 10 or 12 pounds of boost with all the pulley combinations that we had available to us. Our goal was just, we wanted to make a 750 horsepower motor for some reason on this 383, and it did exactly that, fairly easy. Pretty easy, since we're starting with a 500 plus horsepower motor, and then you're adding boost to it. You know, pretty simple to make, you know, lots and lots of power. So that's my recommendation. You can take a 4.8 and a 5.3, put a stroker in it, put a good cam. You know, like I said, I would like to have tried the other, a Truck Norris, and this blower would have been interesting to see. Then you could have had like lots of kind of tire melting torque. Not that that's going to be really in short supply with this kind of blower anyway on this motor, but it would just be cool to have that kind of camshaft. The other way to go is, rather than concentrating your power down low, I like that idea because they have short runner intake manifolds, and that tends to favor power production up high. So with that, and you have a blower that's doing that, the blower gets less effective with RPM. But for me, I'd like to put a camshaft in it that adds power down low, and so we get that, and it kind of helps maybe overcome the torque deficiency of the short runner manifold. But like I said, you're at 4,000 RPM, we're at almost 600 foot-pounds of torque. So it's not like it didn't have very much torque there. It has more than enough to, since something like this is not probably going to go drag race, although it would run fairly respectable, especially if you turn the boost up. And we've made nearly 1,000 horsepower with this blower, this particular blower. So we know that it was a good blower. For the blower shop, does excellent work. And we know that that's a good blower. We know it could make a lot of power if we wanted to do that. But more likely than not, this kind of sticking out of the hood blower with 2 carburetors and stuff on there is going to be more for showmanship than it is for a guy wanting to go out and run 10s or 9s or whatever he would want to run on a combination like this. But he did. He would do it with, you know, with good style points. So let's see what you guys got going on. Let's see. YouTube, I made it for the start. Edward, what's going on? Justin, Trevor, will Gen 3 with 823 heads and Texas speed, LS3 stage 3 cam, have piston valve clearance or be okay? A Gen 3 what? A Gen 3 6-liter, I'm hoping, with 823 heads? 823 heads and normally stage 3 cams. You got to tell me what the intake duration is, but normally that's okay. Is there a future L8T program? Not for me. I think Brian Tooley has run one of those. Carb made more on top. Yeah, no, that didn't work. Single plane. I think it should make more. Thanks for the insight on the towing cam thing. I've got a 96 Vortec 454, so that's a Gen 6. It's a pig down low and needs help. I wiped an exhaust cam at 50,000 miles. That's interesting. All of the ones that we've taken apart last a really long time with the hydraulic roller stuff, and that the EFI intake manifold actually makes pretty good low speed power. It made more than a dual plane, which is no easy task. Ragtop, yep, you're here early. Still a little small block, yep, on a small block 383. This one is on an LS 383. TBS makes good stuff. Put a 1071 or bigger on it. Yeah, we weren't even spinning this one anywhere near where it could be spun to. The gallop is up with the supercharger. Surge is the word. Yeah, don't forget to like the post. I've seen someone make Enter Plus naturally out of an L8T 6.6. That's a lot. You know, there's no poll tonight, unfortunately. The guys from Guatney have made really big power out of some Gen 5 stuff, some Gen 5 NA stuff. Still searching. Yeah, there's not gonna be a poll tonight because, like I said, I can't do that. can't make that work. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why the camera's not showing up on YouTube. It shows up on other stuff. It shows up on other apps. I tried it on I use a screen capture thing or a filming deal, and what is it? Screencast-O-Matic, and now it's called something else. But I use that for doing videos, and it works fine for that. I know you can see me. I'm on my phone. You can see the circles in my eyes because that's the ring. Let's see what happens if I turn that off. Maybe there's enough light from my laptop or from the desktop. Let's see what happens. How's that? Is that better? Is that worse? Still kind of bright though, huh? Let's see, which one do you like better? Do you like light or no light? Like the light? Personally, I kind of don't like the light. Let's see if I can get some light back here, though. There we go. That'll add some light. There we go. That's all good. We're all well lit now. No light. Yeah, that's the that was the poll. Do you like the light or no light? That works good. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think on the cam decision? So if what do you think about doing a Truck Norris cam on something like this? Do you like the idea of going smaller on the camshaft to offset the short runner intake manifold that they always have on these blower manifolds? Because they're always very short, just a big open plenum kind of thing. Do you like that idea, or would you be more, or would you more like putting a camshaft in that they typically put in these positive displacement blower deals, where they run cams that are softer down low and then make more power at the top, which notoriously the Roots blowers are not great at. But like I said, the interesting thing is, though, if they have short runner manifolds, they kind of excel up there. I mean, at least the manifold portion of it does. So what would you guys rather have? Would you guys rather have the smaller cam and the short runners, or would you rather have the bigger cam? It'd be cool to see both. I know, like I said, I'd like to see that test, and we'd have to run this thing down lower than we only ran this thing at 4,000 RPM. So I'd be curious to see. I mean, I know that the Truck Norris is going to do well through most of the curve, but we also know that the Hot Rod or Red Hot cam is going to make more peak power. So it'd be interesting to see, because what normally happens when we run a positive displacement blower like this or any of the other positive displacement blowers, when we run those and we put a camshaft in it that, you know, adds power down low but loses it up top, and the reverse of that, like on the bigger cams, if it loses power down low with the bigger cam, the boost increases there. And so you'd think, well, there's more boost, it should make more power. But but there's less efficiency. That's why there's more boost. And then the boost gets lower out at the top. So, and then people can have the argument all the time about, oh, well, yeah, it's just all that overlap. The blowers don't like overlap and stuff. And I haven't seen that. I have seen every time that I've put a motor together and run it with a camshaft, irrespective of what overlap is doing and what LSA is doing, if it works well on the NA motor, it does pretty well under boost. So you guys are talking bigger cams, smaller cams. Yep. It'd be interesting, you know, like I said, it'd be interesting to try both. And this thing will keep revving, even with this camshaft in it. This thing will keep revving. I mean, it was still climbing, so it would definitely keep going to 7,000 at least. Yes, not the dreaded overlap. Yes. Yep, that's all the overlap all the time. Can 241 heads work with a 6-liter? Yes. You can put any, on a 6-liter, you can put any cathedral port head, any rec port head. Well, not an LS7 head. But I'm talking about any sort of LS3 and down head on there. It works fine. 241 heads are not great. They make more power than a 317 head does. They make less power than when we compared them. I only compared them on the 5.3. We didn't use the 241 on the 6-liter. But the 241 made less power than the 706 head. Thanks. Does it need a particular piston? The overlap is where the chop sound comes from, though. How much RPM did you want to run with the blower? I'd say go the cam that matches the RPM range. Yeah, you pick it up, you know, make it do what you want it to do and where you want it to do. You don't need different pistons for a rec port head versus a cathedral port head. You can still run the valve relief in the same position. Most of them have valve reliefs that work on both of them, work with both of them, both different size valves. So that's not an issue. Or you just run a flat top piston, run the one that's there. Overlap conspiracy theory. That's right. When is Richard going to have a night where he talks about conspiracy theories? That's what we need, right? We need the happy hour conspiracy theory night. We'll put that in with a 24-hour marathon. Flat Earth is always a good one too. UFOs, all of that's good stuff. It's just fantastic. I know I'm waiting for the Discovery thing to come back on that I've been watching about Skinwalker Ranch. I really kind of like that. I'm curious to see if they. I want them to have found a wormhole, and have, in some ways, kind of mapped it, which would be cool. But unfortunately, there needs to be a new there needs to be new episodes. I'm sure that they're got to be filming them. There's no round Earth. Is that what it is? Because it's elliptical. Blind Frog Ranch is another one. I'm not an overlap denier. I'm an overlap skeptic. Let's see. I'm getting a camshaft and a DoD delete done on L76 and was told that the trunnion caps on the rockers were welded or soldered. Has anybody heard such a thing? I've never heard of that. What, the trunnion caps for the rockers have been welded? I'd never heard of anything like that. I have seen weird stuff though. Did have a guy try to glue the rocker bolt onto the rocker, which doesn't work, by the way. Is there a cam that stands out for a 4x4 off-road application? Is this the LS motor that you were talking about? Truck Norris. I'd like to see some LSA tests and some more explanation from you to help me understand what to know. You mean lobe separation angle or the LSA blower? How different is the F-body camshaft compared to the B-body camshaft and the LT1? I don't know but that information's got to be out there, right? Blower, high RPM 4.8. I've run that a bunch. Not with this blower, but with Vortex I have. You want to talk about lobe separation angle? But the problem with discussing one aspect of camshaft is if you change lobe separation angle, you're changing other things. So it's not lobe separation angle that's making the change. It's the valve events that are making the change. And that's something that a lot of people out there are missing. They think, oh, all you have to do is have a camshaft and then you change that number to that number and then that's what makes it better. Well, what else did you do? Because depending on how you did that, you could make it bad. Or maybe you could make it good. What I recommend to everybody is go to Summit Racing, go to their camshaft calculator that the guys from Cam Motion did for them, start plugging stuff in and see what happens. Start plugging in lift and duration and lobe separation angle and start changing the lobe separation angle and see what happens to the opening and closing events. And then you'll go, oh yeah, that's changing. There's a lot of good information there. How do we get a 0.5 brake specific on a supercharged LS with 2 carburetors on it? The answer is that we didn't. Cam specs people want versus the cam specs they think that they want. Yeah. Well, and it's a good discussion, and it would be a good discussion to have with David Visor, and it could be a good discussion to have with Brian Tooley. Would Truck Norris cam still be your recommended cam for a 408 stroker and a 4x4 square body use for street and farm? I probably would go a little bigger on a 408. I think, Cash, I have Truck Norris cams available, and then I also have a 219 cam, which would be one step up from that. On a 408, I think I put that 219 cam in it. 671 sounds like a good burnout setup. It is. I mean, this thing is just all the torque. It's everywhere you look. It's 600 foot-pounds. LS3 Speedmaster ITB on an LS1 TCI adapters for square port to cathedral. Is it worth it? Why do you have to do square port to cathedral port? They had Speedmaster used to have cathedral port individual runner manifolds. I've tested many of them. So do they not offer them anymore? Do they only offer LS3 ones? And I don't recommend that you ever put adapters going from one style head to another style head or another style intake manifold. Every time I've tested that, it's lost power. The only exception to that is if you want to put an LSA on there and you have a motor that has cathedral port heads and you want to run adapters to do that, I would say okay. Otherwise, don't put an LS3 intake manifold on your cathedral port heads with adapters because it makes less power. And don't go the other way either. Which gets better fuel mileage at the highway speeds, long distance driving, a stock motor or a pump gas build putting out more power? I don't know. It depends on how you put out more power and what you did to it and where you're making more power. I honestly think that that's primarily camshaft that's going to determine the fuel mileage. Richard, will you be coming to Power Cruise USA in Minnesota this year? I don't know anything about that. You see the Steve Morris dyno blow-up video? I did not. More on raising the piston on a late 440. Nick had a dyno video on a 6-pack today, claims 0 deck and a stock head CCs using thick gaskets so he can run 91. Says shim gaskets take 94 octane. So he added more. He lowered the compression and that helped with detonation, he said?
Knock on Noah's door, please, and tell him to come and eat. Knock on Daddy's too.
What cam is the 219? I can send you the specs if you send me an email. That cam that I have made about 80 horsepower more than a stock cam. So it's good. It makes a little bit less than a Truck Norris down low, but more power at the peak. Once I look at the Summit cam thing, I'm sure I'm going to have more questions. Yeah. Nice numbers on the 383 at 7 pounds of boost. 750. Yeah, that story's been up in a few places. A blower blew up on his dyno. That's happened to Westech too. They something broke on the motor and it there was a backfire and it blew the lid off of the supercharger into the ceiling tiles, and it happened like immediately. I'm thinking it broke a valve or something, or broke a rocker or something, and that's what caused it. Another question on the 4x4 square body: would you pair 219 cam with 317 heads, looking for emphasis on low end torque as the truck won't see 5,000? I wouldn't pick the 317 heads. I would pick a better head than that. If you want low speed, I mean the 40, if it's a stroker, it's going to have torque, but 317s would not usually be my choice. Do you think a boosted stock 4.8 would tow good in a truck with a manual? Yes, I think so. The thing about fuel mileage, though, and when people are talking about a turbo combination or a more powerful combination, is a lot of guys like to use the extra power a lot. And if you do, you're not trying to get good fuel mileage. You're not driving it like you want to get good fuel mileage. You are driving it like you want to enjoy the extra power, which causes you to use more fuel because it takes more fuel to use that power. So the way you drive, when I'm talking about fuel mileage as a comparison, which is much harder to do, I'm talking about a steady state, light throttle, using only the amount of throttle that's required to maintain whatever speed you want. And even that's subjective. Like if I'm towing a trailer, I might not be wanting to go 75 or 80 miles an hour towing a trailer. If you're doing that, you're not trying to get good mileage. If you want it to get good mileage and you want to be able to drive 75 or 80 miles an hour towing your whatever you're towing, then you shouldn't be realistically asking for that because you're not driving correctly. You're doing the biggest thing that takes away from fuel mileage, and you can't ask some other little thing to compensate for the thing that you're doing wrong. It's just not going to happen. Maybe it's going to make a little bit of a difference. Probably not. But you can't overcome that with something small. Let's see. Speaking of Summit, they're running a sale on small block Chevy cams. Very cool. Would it be a good guess to say Engine Masters had low ratings for the reason they canceled it? That's just 100% speculation on your part, right? I remember seeing a video of the dragster popping off the heads in the blower. I've seen, I mean, that's why they invented the blower straps for these things, because if you go back, there's lots of video of, and this might even be film, not video, of blowers blowing off and landing in the stands. I mean, it's bad. This was a Pro Charger, okay. Power Cruise USA is an Australian event with lots of cruising around the road course, roll racing, other cars, Aussie burnout competitions. And where is that, CJ? That's here in the States? We went to a true minimum deck and a true minimum CC and a 15 gasket, took race gas. Remember, this motor was designed with Sunoco. Yeah, all of that's great, but none of that changes the point that I made when we were talking about this. My point was, if the piston was 150 or 200 down in the hole and you brought it up to zero deck, it would make more power. Are you saying that since I use a 219 cam and my big block, I'm going to get good gas mileage? Yes, sure. I built a 403 with an F1A94 85 4.5-inch blower pulley, LS3 manifold, CNC port 820 at one heads, makes 820 wheel horsepower. What do you think is holding it back? Well, with a 4.5-inch blower pulley, that's not very much boost, right? And what camshaft is in this thing? But a trouble, because that F1A94 will make 1300, so you're a long ways away from whatever the maximum of that blower is. Would Trailblazer SS be an intake be a power limitation on an NA408 stroker build? Yes. A fast manifold will make a lot more than a Trailblazer SS on a 408. But how much camshaft do you have? Can you explain what the difference is between a normal two-stroke piston engine and a Detroit diesel, please? I can't. I don't know which two things you're talking about. Difference in ECU, Phytech Terminator. If you're talking about the difference between a Phytech and a Holley, I would choose a Holley all day, every day. Primarily for me. I'm not a tuner, but primarily for me, because I know that one and I do testing with it all the time. Chevron Custom Supreme. Did you get information on upgrading to a 4L80? Nope. Nick claimed 9.9 to 1. Factory claimed compression was high without blueprint. True to make more power, but it complicates. Do you believe the Gen 5 LT1 stock rods and pistons are stronger than Gen 4? Thinking of taking an LQ4 board out to use LT1 rods and pistons. I don't really know why you would do that. I don't know what the difference is between those rods, but why don't you just get aftermarket rods that you know are stronger than both of those? If that's your concern. Are you trying to make, like, how much power are you trying to make? Since we'd made 1500 with stock Gen 4 rods, are you trying to do more than that? Texas Eagle Bald Twin Turbo Cam. Power Cruise USA is at Brainerd International. The event is so popular they do spring and fall events. Oh, that's cool. Is a BTR 400 plus NA cam on the 408? Also, have you heard anything about War Performance throttle bodies? Don't know anything about those throttle bodies. And are you asking if I've ever used that cam? I don't know if I've ever, I may have run that cam. I have to go back and look and see. Speaking of mileage, how much better would you expect switching from a V8 to a 4-cylinder? Theoretically, if all drivetrain vehicles are the same, in Belgium they have 4-cylinder Suburbans. Really? Are they turbo 4-cylinders? Detroit diesel has exhaust valves instead of exhaust ports. Darn windy here, like tornado weather. There are tornado weather, or tornado warnings that we saw in the news in various parts of, I think, the middle of the United States. I saw Texas as one of them. I don't know what the other states were. Would you think a factory Gen 6 454 rods would be good for 600 horsepower? Yeah, we've made twice that with them. What are some of the mileage numbers people are getting out of boosted 4.8s? Does anybody know? Every time I talk about fuel mileage, somebody invariably comes up with how their V8 gets, you know, unrealistic amounts of fuel mileage. You need to get us out of SB2 heads? You mean I need to test them? Is that what you're saying? Rainier International is 3.1 mile road course with a quarter-mile drag strip. Cool. A few tornadoes in Ohio. Anaheim Hills gets hit with tornadoes because of the geographical setup. I've seen those before. We've seen tornadoes in Sacramento too, oddly. And my wife filmed one from her school. It didn't touch down. It was just, spinning up in the sky. T, I did see the mountain lion thing. I saw it on social media. Have you tested your cams on a junkyard LS? Yes. Yes, I have. Master Chef Junior, you like that one? Just curious what to expect power and torque wise. I haven't run one on a 408, not that cam. Not either one of those cams. I'll have to look and see. Maybe something comparable on a 408. Overgo, you're getting an ad or something? Yeah, that's YouTube making money. Should get 30 miles per gallon cruising at 1800 RPM. What should get that? Not a truck, right? Steve Moore, something on the dyno broke or the flywheel bolts broke and the engine went to 12,000 RPM, turning the blower to 105,000. That's a lot. Causing the pellet to grenade. Yeah, that's not good. Speaking of fuel mileage, everyone asks me this question about my turbo 4.3 liter. I don't drive it for miles per gallon. I drive it for miles per gallon. Best mileage I had on the Caprice was 13. It's also Richard making money. Yeah, Richard's not making money on live feeds. That's a myth. What's the highest cruise air fuel ratio you've heard of? Running 85. I'm currently doing 14.7, but the mileage is horrible. Well, the caloric content of E85 is not great, so it's going to use 25 or 30% more fuel than gas anyways. So even if you have the stoic value right, but I know on lean burn stuff, we run it at 19-1. Mountain lion killed the older brother. That's right. Did you see the one where the I think it was a woman trapped the mountain lion under their bike because it was attacking another person and then pinned the mountain lion down with a bike? I thought, dude, that's genius. We need to get this guy to make money on YouTube. I'm not saying I don't make money. I'm saying live feeds don't make money. Honda Insight with a boat tail will get a legitimate 100 miles per gallon in lean burn. I've not seen that. Not on a real road. Yeah, t-shirts definitely are a good thing. The older Honda Insights were good on fuel mileage. But anything that's in is 3-digit fuel mileage is ultra slow, usually drafting, eco moding. It's a lot of different stuff. No input on longevity of the engine when driven versus longevity on the dyno. 600 horsepower in stock rods is fine. Tornadoes were in South Ohio Valley. I said 30 miles per. Oh, 30 miles per hour cruising? 30 miles per hour would get good mileage. E85 costs more than regular gas? I've never seen that. CJ, you've tried the lean cruising? I'd like to try that on my truck. I just need to get the truck working properly stocked before we do that. You ever messed with a Chrysler thermoquad? I have. I had a thermoquad on my van, and it worked great. I was told in school Shell Corporation holds the right to the 50 mile per gallon carburetor. I thought it was 200 mile per gallon. Think about building a re-sleeved LC953 block to 7 liters and keeping the VVT, but use the 210, 224 VVT cam from comp. Would TFS 220s be enough? Should I go fast or Trailblazer S going into a 2500 HD 410? I think you're going to have issues with that camshaft in VVT. I don't know how much of a swing you're going to allow. Richard, what do you think is one step bigger for Choppa Copper cam? That 219 cam that I have is one step up from that cam, because that cam is essentially the same as the, I mean, it made the same power essentially as the Truck Norris cam. E85 is the price of regular here, only one station. E85 is a lot less than regular here. Why does running 85 blow out so much water during the cold run? It's probably hydroscopic. Best defense against a mountain lion is a man's best friend. Can you run 1.7 rocker arms on a 649 lift intake side and 1.8 rockers on a 609 exhaust side? Well, why do you want to do that? Do you think that your lifts need to be the same? Brian and I had a long talk about this on the change in lift, and because my question was, what camshaft do we test this on? Oh, my question was, if you have, and this is a question we get all the time, the question is if you have cylinder heads that continue to flow at 700 lift, and your camshaft right now is 620 or 630, what would happen if you had a 700 lift version of that cam? And what do you guys think happened? Looks like you'll be fine. Good. What do you know about the 1976 Dodge 360 lean burn ignition system? I don't know anything about it. I remember reading about it when I was going down and finding the information on the little red wagon or whatever, or the E58 360, that's the motor I think is better than the 340. But when I was doing that, they were talking about the lean burn thing. I've never seen any tests on it. Makes clouds out at the tailpipe and the oil cap. 700 lifts is almost a 3/4 race cam. Yeah, the answer is it didn't make any more power. So the thing about matching the lift to the flow of your cylinder head, that's not always the thing. And we saw a similar thing with the Truck Norris NSR cam and the regular Truck Norris cam. It was only like 5 or 6 horsepower. And I think at that range, there's going to be much more of a difference there, because that's kind of in the sweet spot. So I think once you get out really far, like the difference between an 800 lift cam and an 820 lift cam is probably nothing. But that's just me. That's just one guy's opinion. This isn't my band. This is our band. Yes, that's a Jack Black reference. That just happened. Come on, don't tip over. I'm trying to make my thing not tip over. It's got all kinds of gangster lean. It's part of the air cleaner, the lean burn thing is. Lean burn is a good idea. If you can get the thing to drive down the road, and this is an important thing for people to understand, it has to make a certain amount of power to push that vehicle down the road against the things that are resisting that vehicle going down the road at that speed. So it has to have enough power to do that. If you can do that while using less fuel, you could produce that amount of power while using less fuel. Also, it's obviously also good to reduce the amount of power that's required to do that by, you know, aerodynamics and weight and things. But if you have if those are fixed and you have a certain amount of power that you have to produce to make the thing go 70 miles an hour down a flat road, and you can use less fuel doing that, like lean burn, then you'll get better fuel mileage. Can you run a stage 4 LS7 cam on an LS3? I don't know. I don't know what stage 4 cam you're talking about. I don't know what the specs are. I run a 1-250 lift. Yeah, that's a lot. I just bought a 97 GMC 1-ton, 5-speed with a 454. That's cool. You should run it for a little bit because that lifter might come back. But otherwise, Comp has lifters for that are readily available. They have small cams for that I like. I have a bunch of videos up on cams that we've run on those. That's just a Gen 6 454. Dad's race car, we found mid 800 lift cam perform better than 900. Yeah, and you get to, on when you start talking extremes like that, you get to the point where all you're doing is destroying valve springs a lot earlier. Modesto's in the house. My 07Z still does 26 miles per gallon. If I try, and that's 615 wheel horsepower. I think if I had the timing in my truck that it would get over 20. I think. I don't expect much out of a tired 5.3 in a 4-wheel drive, but it is a 1500. And I'm, you know, cruising. I'm cruising at the 70, which is the speed limit. It's going 5s in the quarter this year with a 540 big block of Lenco. Cool. That's really fast. What mile an hour is that? How would you raise the compression on an LM7? You could put, you could mill the head. You could put 4/8 pistons in it because they're flat tops and because the LM7 has a dish piston. You could change the head gasket from a 53 to a 41. Our 67 Camaro gets 25.8 miles per gallon at 70 miles an hour with a 1300 horsepower twin turbo. You see, these are the kind of things that I'm talking about. The LT1, my Cadillac, would get 23 miles per gallon on the freeway. Turbo stuff, because it's hiding most of its potential, tends to get better fuel mileage than really cantankerous cammed NA builds. We know that that's true. .253, that's pretty big, pretty tall freeway gears there. Pretty tall gearing. The nice thing is that the overdrive in most of these transmissions is, you know, they've got a lot of overdrive, which is nice. .19 highway, 13 street, 230 miles per hour. Yeah, that's a lot. What's the most power you can get out of a 5.3 and 87 octane? I don't know. I don't do that. I don't try to run 87 octane and get lots of power. I don't really put those two things together. I run 87 in my truck, but I don't do it when I'm trying to get lots of power, though. 1-ton dually, 11 miles per gallon on the freeway. Yeah, that's not great. Our dually was, I think our dually might have been double digits. It was a 454, 77, and so it was not great. But it only got 5 or 6 when we were towing with it. $30 plus miles per gallon in a V8 going to Vegas. Vegas is not a good route to get fuel mileage because it has some fairly serious grades from Southern California. What would you recommend for a camshaft on an LQ9 with a 671 small bore blower? A 671 is a small bore blower? Well, you get a test of the LS headed 4-cylinder. That's not a real thing. That's not a real motor. It doesn't exist. I mean, the motor, you can see a picture of it, but it hasn't ever run, and they've never run it with that head. It's not actually a real thing. It's an industrial motor that they put that head on and then just put those numbers up there. It never made those. It doesn't do that. And we've tried, both Freiberger and I have tried to get a hold of that engine so we can put the LS motor, an LS head on there and actually run it, but we have not been successful. My F2 Procharger 427 small block on E85 gets 8 miles per gallon on the freeway. Yeah. The overdrive stuff is amazing, especially to people who had driven with turbo 350s and turbo 400s back in the day. And especially if you did stuff where you had those transmissions and you had, like, 410s or 430s or 488s or 456s, or if you had 5 series gears, you're really getting it done. My 1500 6-liter, I ran 87, still going to run it with the Truck Norris cam swap. Okay. Can we get an experiment LS with an LSA supercharger and a GT45 turbo? How would this end up? Positive, plus, and negative displacement power outers. It would end up just like the other compound blower turbo things that I've already run on the channel. We did that on a 3.8 liter on the 3800. We had a turbo. In fact, it was a GT45 blowing into the M90 supercharger. So it'd be the same. I mean, a GT45 turbo probably doesn't support what that blower could support, but it would depend on what power level we ran it on. I don't know what the GLH question mark means. Ever heard of a Modus LS-based V4? Yes, I've seen those. I got a Ram Econo Diesel to tow RV. It goes 19 miles per gallon. Diesel stuff is really good. Those are small intake bolts to hold the blower. Well, look at the 671 has aluminum intake bolts, because they don't want people over torquing them. They'd rather have them break the bolt, because that makes more sense. We got 2 more minutes. 2 minutos más, por favor. Do you know anyone from ESS Supercharger? I've never heard of them. I've never heard of that blower. Selling a 67 Camaro, rotten top, 327. Is it more than 1,500? When are you doing testing on my GLHS? After I get it back from the car farm. I need to go pick it up. My 78 Firebird got 26 miles per gallon. That's good. That's good fuel mileage. What heads cam intake combo would you use on a bigger LS and a truck application for a 408? I need to know what you're trying to get. What are you trying to get done? Are you trying to make a lot of power and torque with it? Is it a race truck? Is it a tow truck? Is it a street driver? What is it you're trying to do? That's going to dictate the combination. But towing a single car, you could do that if you just put all the stock stuff on the 408. Do you want it to be more powerful than that? We need to test rocker arms with bad names. How does a? You mean that people have said bad things about? Like what kind of rocker arms? Boost is the answer. People need to go back and watch the video, the live feed that we did where we were talking about running a stock 4.8 or 5.3 with a turbo on it, and that's kind of the way to go. After the Omni, you should build a long tail speedboat like they do in Thailand. I love those things. I follow a couple of them. I think it's Box of Diesel is the one that I like the most because they have really crazy stuff. Not only do they have lots of really cool diesel compound stuff, like little diesel 4-cylinders, and they're decked out to the nines and they're awesome. And then they also have a lot of the little twin cam 1.6 liter Toyota motors too, and they're I think it's amazing. I would love to go there and do something with those guys. I just want to take a ride in some of those boats. I think that they're very cool. Push rod length is almost always with aftermarket rockers too long or too short. PRW rocker arms, Speedmaster, deep motors. The problem that I have with those is that running them on the engine dyno, it tells us almost nothing because they almost always work on the engine dyno, but do they last for, 400 miles, 4,000, 45,000, 400,000? How long do they last? And we can't really do that on the engine dyno. Shock bolt on the front end, a 1/2-inch bolt snapped. That's usually you got to work pretty hard to snap a bolt like that. I have tested some of the offshore head bolts, and I was not a fan. They were very, very stretchy. No matter how much you turn it, it doesn't hit the torque number. You take it out, and it's about a 1/2 inch longer. It's like pulling taffy. Ran a tank full of E85, my flex fuel 5.3. Yeah, it's not a good idea. I wouldn't ever think that the lower price of E85 makes it a better choice for spending less money, but it is really good for performance. Oh, got a little spider over there. I like those little boats. $1,500 and get it out of my driveway. I like E85 at 27 pounds. That's where E85 would be definitely useful. 27 pounds is a lot of power. That's getting up near 3 times NA, so it's a lot. Last couple of days, I noticed some blow-by on the square body. Good to run E85 to clean up the deposits. Yeah, Inconel exhaust valves are a good idea if you're running temperature and running sustained temperature. Like I'm thinking about putting Inconel valves on the Bonneville motor. AMR 500. I'm just waiting to get the Metro for that. So yeah, whenever you want me to endurance test rocker, send them and I'll do a test for you. So you're just going to drive them around and hope that something breaks? That's not a good way to go. That's not a good way to go. Period. How much more time can you run at 85 and 91? Well, for us, we can run. We don't make any more power on the 85 on an NA53 than we make on gas. We're running it cold enough that we can run all the timing in it. So we can run 29 or 30 degrees of total timing on pump gas on 91 in a 5.3. And so that's what we do. We run it on pump gas. And then we try E85 and it doesn't really pick up any power. I listened to a video about Camtech on David Vizard channel. He named you at the end. David's good. I like David. We get along really well. I've known him for a really long time. Yeah, you can do water meth or water injection too. It also cleans the pistons. Have you ever heard of an LS3 head, a ported LS3 head, a ported stock one going over 400? I don't think I've seen that. That seems like it would be a lot. I've seen aftermarket LS3 heads do that. And on that note, it is time to go. But I will see you guys all tomorrow. Finger.